Hey kids, it's Old Man shouting at clouds, and now with others too. Chatting about the CFL is what they're going to do. Some have no contacts and others have no clues. Everyone will tell us all their quirky football views. Hear what Old Man and others know. It's the CFL Outsiders Show.
Hey, GT, what are we going to do this week?
Same thing we do every week, old man. Take over the CFL.
Hey, kids, welcome back to another episode of the CFL Outsiders. I remain, as always, your 100% impartial, completely unbiased, and frankly right tuckered out from completing another lap around the sun, host Old Man shouting at clouds. With me this week, as usual, are GT.
Hey, everyone. And as you know, the sun's not yellow, it's chicken.
Yes, and MJ.
Hey everyone. Happy to be here to talk football.
Okay, good. And unfortunately, we have to start with something that's tangentially football, but certainly not good news. I'm sure by now most everyone has heard that there was an accident on the weekend that took the lives of two young men, Jaden Dalkey of the Rough Riders and Bishma. Unfortunately, I will not be able to pronounce his last name, so I will just spell it here. R-A-I. Bishma was a recent Canadian, well, I guess not Canadian, but had moved to Canada from India within the last couple of years. And very unfortunate, both of these young men lost their lives. There's been a few facts come out about it that seem questionable, and an awful lot of speculation out there that at this point there's more we don't know than we do know. It certainly was questionable, but I think that we want to, or at least I don't want to lose sight of the fact that what matters here is both these young men, 30 years old for Dalkey and 22 for Bishma, lost their lives and should still be with us. It's one of those things just isn't fair. And the Riders have announced that during the pregame show, they're going to be honoring Bishma and that they're doing whatever they can to support his family through this. All I can say is from here, our hearts go out to anyone who knew and loved either of these young men. And I don't know that there's more to say. Do either of you want to add anything to this?
This has been really tough to take. And I think what has actually upset me the most out of all of this is the awful comments that were made about Bishma by people who are CFL fans. And just be better humans. And that man didn't ask for what happened to him. Okay, I don't want to place blame, but he was not at fault for this. And so just, be better. And what a tragedy. His family had set up a GoFundMe to help with their funeral costs and get his body back to India. And they have reached that goal, and the GoFundMe is shut down. But if you want to help out, make a donation to Impaired Driving Charities, make a donation to a charity for new immigrants to Canada. I think any of those charities would appreciate your help.
Yeah, obviously, it at this point in time, I consider it controversial more than anything else, only because we don't have all the details. The one fact that I believe it's a fact that they established was that Dalkey was going the wrong way down a divided highway. So to place any kind of blame on the other driver or any kind of responsibility or any kind of comment about the other driver is absolutely wrong. This gentleman, Bishna, had absolutely no idea what was about to happen to him as he was doing what he should have been doing, as far as we know, driving the right way on the right side of the highway. So I'm a little surprised, given the circumstances, that they're already doing all of this honoring. I would not be surprised if there was, and this is only my speculation, but I would not be surprised if there was a whole bunch of people running out and buying Jaden Dalkey sweaters today and tomorrow and this week. And my advice is wait a little while, because you may not want to be wearing that later on if any of this information we have so far been led to believe comes out as true. And that's the same to the Riders. I'm a little surprised they're rushing to a tribute as early as Thursday. I would not be doing that, because 3 months from now, it may not be the same kind of tribute. When you don't have all the information, wait till you have all the information before making a decision. You can make the decision based on Bishna, and I'm glad that they have decided to do that and do something in honor of him, because again, we know that he wasn't doing anything wrong. He is the victim. There are not two victims here. There is one victim. Remember that the other person is not a victim. He's not a hero. He's simply at this point in time a ex-football player, unfortunately, that was driving down the wrong side of the highway late at night, apparently. So, having said all that, I do feel very badly for his family and his friends and his acquaintances. That it's always tough to lose someone that you love, and I appreciate what they're going through and that what they're going to have to go through, because we have to remember again, they're going to live with that memory as well. So, fully supportive of them. Again, I'm just a little surprised that people jump to this conclusion and to this resolution as quickly as they did and as quickly as they do without having all the information. That's what I have to say.
Moving on to more football type stuff, but still not good news. The first game of the week with BC at Edmonton. On BC's second play from scrimmage, Nathan Rourke was sacked and got some sort of injury, which has not yet been defined, to his non-throwing shoulder. He sat out the entire game from that. They've now come out and said that that injury will have him out for a while, but I believe the quote was, "We're talking weeks, not months." So hopefully for the best for the league and the Lions and everyone all around, this is maybe a 3-week to a month kind of thing at the most. And certainly won't help BC's chances. Certainly won't help BC's chances going forward. Anything else for either of you to say on that, or do we just
Well,
get the news out there?
we were sitting, I mean, I guess we can talk about this game, but we were at the game, and with my husband and my dad are big BC Lion fans. We were sitting in the end zone right where BC walks in and out and so we watched him walk past holding his arm. He was jogging a bit, so I was like, okay, it's not lower body.
Yeah.
And then he came back out. He was all up in a sling, so tough.
Yeah.
My dad didn't even get to see him play because my dad was coming down the stands and he missed, so he didn't even get to see Rourke play, and he'd been looking forward to that so much.
Yeah.
I hope he's back soon.
Yeah, there's it's another bad week for quarterbacks. Obviously, we're lucky that a couple of other guys didn't get more injured, because a couple of guys like both Fajardo and VA got tossed around quite a bit in their games. So they were a little bruised, if nothing else, by the end of their game. So considering how all the quarterbacks started this year, we're lucky that we have, well, we're not lucky, but there's 3 down now, and it's going to hurt the overall performance of the game and of the league. It's not good news when we're losing starting quarterbacks. So they've already signed a couple of guys, from what I understand, in BC, and they're added a couple of other NFL guys to their negotiation list. So they're searching for answers. But it's Chase Bryce, I guess, or from here on
For the
for the
time
next little
being.
while.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of those quarterbacks, the other one in the news was Zach, who was injured not this last week, but the weekend before, and he's officially been moved to the 6-game list now. So it looks like it will be Drew Brown's show in Winnipeg till late August at least.
Well, the quote from O'Shea is that he doesn't think Zach will be on for the entire 6 weeks. So
it's going to be like MBT's 6-game injured list. If Drew's not doing well, I think I thought they were already shuffling him back over to active roster during the game.
It'll be interesting to see how long that they do have to run with him, but he's looked competent so far, so I don't think they'll rush Zach back by any means. And if he's going to be the guy next year anyways, they're going to have to show some faith. So I don't think they're going to pull the plug out on him real quick. And that neck injury is reoccurring at this stage based on last year and now this year. So you can't rush him back too soon. So he might be out the full 6 week and even longer. Who knows? But at this point in time, what I heard the quote from O'Shea was that he's probably not going to be out for the entire 6 week period.
Yeah, and that's O'Shea.
Yeah,
Who knows?
that's why I qualified the state.
Yeah, if Drew had finished the game this weekend, the second half, the way he played in the first half, they might be pushing Zach harder. But he did come back and play better in the second half, so maybe they'll be happy with him for a while yet. We'll see what happens this week. Lyrical eloquence, our bit where we stick in some song lyrics. Again, with me all stuffed up and everything, I just forgot all about it last week. So I'm 2 weeks in a row, I haven't had any. But we had no guesses on it. Was there any out there for takings?
Yeah, there was. I made it pretty obvious that I had made one last week. I just didn't know. It was, as I said, it wasn't totally obscure. It was a pretty big hit in Canada.
Yeah.
Of course, it was Montreal Calling by Mobile from circa 2007-ish, 2006, 2007-ish. And it was a pretty big hit for the band at that time. And just based on those two games, I figured that was a worthy contributor.
Yes.
This week you may find 2 lines dropped. I would just let you know that. MJ, you didn't throw in your obligatory Taylor Swift line somewhere last week? Every week I'm just going to say Taylor Swift. It's like when we play Trivial Pursuit and you don't know the answers to any of the American history, you just say Thomas Jefferson, because 9 out of 10 times it's going to be right. So yes, every time I just going to say, oh, it's Taylor Swift. So
it was Taylor Swift. Well, I mean, I said Karma is a boy on the Bombers, but the original lyrics are Karma is a boy on my screen, and then Taylor Swift changed it to Karma is a boy on the Chiefs, and so I just carried the thread to the Bombers.
There you go, close enough.
Carried on with the poetic license, yes indeed. Okay, we're not a NFL podcast, we're a CFL podcast, but apparently my panel wants to talk some NFL, starting with MJ, who had something about the NFL Players Association wanting more grass now, maybe, or?
Well, yeah, so I don't know if you know, but there was something called the World Cup recently in NFL stadiums in America.
I thought it was called a FIFA. I thought according to the glorious leader, it was just a FIFA.
Yeah.
Right.
It was the best FIFA to buy 4 ever. Of course. Oh, maybe 5.
Obviously. In the photos and everything. Let's just get this back on track.
Yeah.
So FIFA made the host cities change all of their stadiums to grass. And now some of the stadiums are tearing out their grass and composting it and putting back in the turf. So there are 15 out of 30 stadiums in the NFL have grass turf. 1 Canadian stadium has grass turf, like Toronto. Toronto's I looked it up, it has 95% grass, 5% synthetic, and that is because they share a stadium with soccer. Now, the Players Association in the NFL is saying, okay, so you can put grass into these stadiums. You told us you couldn't, but you can. And so now they are on a big campaign, and their Players Association put a statement, and they have lots of different players talking about it, and they have the hashtag worth the cost and as their hashtag, because they're saying that the savings on the cost of grass turfs gets passed on to players' bodies. And they're the ones who pay the price. They're the ones that lose the paychecks. They're the ones that have the lifelong injuries because you cheaped out and wouldn't put grass turf in. You know what? It's getting some traction because the Kelsey brothers talked about it on their podcast, and Travis actually said in preseason he would count how many games he'd have to play on turf instead of grass, and to prepare himself for like potential injuries. And so it's just interesting. And then someone was like, you can't have grass in Canada. I was like, well, Toronto has grass. And you know what? Buffalo and Green Bay have grass. And so I'm wondering if the Players Association makes a big push for grass, if that's something that might be happening in Canada, because you know what? There's new technology now. It's not how it used to be. They can grow grass a lot faster. There's different techniques to growing it, better technology, more cost effective than it used to be. So maybe this is a trend, and some players won't be blown out their Achilles or having their whole legs ripped up from rash or separating their shoulders. So hopefully we'll see.
It makes sense to some degree. I assume most of the NFL stadiums are NFL only. They're not NFL slash soccer like BMO is here, where it's where it's soccer and football. And so if it's only football, then you can do it. Soccer guys have to have it perfect. Their turf or their pitch, as they like to say, has to look like a golf green, or else it's not good enough. So that is a problem when you're trying to play football on it one week and then play soccer on it within a few days. Toronto has managed to do it, and they've been extremely lucky, honestly, over the 10 years or so that they've been at BMO. It was a major point of confrontation for the soccer types when the Argos were first moving in there, that they would be ruining their pitch. In fact, it's kind of ironic because the only games that I've been to where the grass has looked bad has been after a soccer game, not after a football game. When we get to the shorter field, that 2 yards extra that they have to have for the 17-yard end zone, that's what's turf right now in one end. So that will be gone with the shorter end zones next year and the shorter field if we still go to the shorter field. So it will be all grass next year. But sir, and Vancouver went to grass for the World Cup as far as of course. But I believe they've already started to tear it out to put turf back in.
It's already torn out. It's interesting because the Whitecaps are the Whitecaps want to take over BC Place. And so if they take over management at BC Place, I'm wondering if they're going to push to put grass in. They'll probably want them. MLS will probably want them to, right?
Oh, yeah, MLS wants them to, but it's more about the local, because I'm not sure every stadium in the U.S. in soccer is natural grass either. That would be a question I'd like to see. Are all franchises in the U.S. MLS franchises, are they all playing on natural grass? Because it's not a requirement in MLS. It is in the European leagues, but it's not here in North America because they share so many stadiums. They just knew they couldn't get away with it. So I understand and support the NFLPA's goal. It'd be nice if all the stadiums were grass only, but I can see the conflict. Why it's easier to just go with turf and not have to worry about the conflict.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I was not even aware of that. So thanks for filling me in on it. And on the other side here with the NFL, GT said to me, we got to talk about the NFL Buy Canadian campaign. So you have to tell me about that too.
Yeah, I've noticed this over the last few weeks watching the games on TSN, how many commercials the NFL is running with your Canadian superstars. You buy, and yours this and you're that. Canada this and Canada that. It's like the campaign the CFL should have been running for this entire season. For the CFL, for our Canadian players. The marketing in the NFL gets it. Now, they have the money to do it, so that helps. And maybe that was the problem. They had to go with a Canadian focus campaign for the CFL, or it's a hit, or whatever they're calling this silly thing. For the other, maybe, I don't know, but they missed the boat is my point, considering the NFL jumped right aboard and has managed to make this work. As we talked about last week about being at the Stampede, they're just making the right decisions to drive the brand that the CFL continues not to do. It's just another, why aren't we doing this stuff?
Yeah, they had those on last year near the end of the season, because I did notice them last year. I think for playoffs they had them, because I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, look, there's someone from Alberta playing in the NFL. But yeah, this year it feels a lot more pointed.
Yeah.
They're on a lot more. Yeah. What a swing and a miss for CFL again.
Yeah. NFL is a machine.
Absolutely.
They don't miss an opportunity.
I think that the CFTSN gives the CFL some like cheap ad money though. Like, don't be like that. Like they surely they do. Like they do other advertising. They have like whatever, like I don't know. They could have done a little bit of something.
I got to tell you, I get the feeling that TSN really doesn't give a damn about CFL right now. I mean, this was another weekend where they had the Winnipeg Ottawa game set to appear on one channel, and I had my recorder set up to record on that channel, and they couldn't get it right. The first quarter of what should have been the football game was not even a World Cup game, but a panel show about the World Cup after the game. And you can't tell me, if you wanted that on your number one channel, great. Why didn't you a week ahead bump the football somewhere else? rather than leave a bunch of CFL fans pissed off 2 weeks in a row. I have no time for TSN right now. I think they don't seem to give a damn.
Well,
Sorry, that's my rant.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was about to have a meltdown when I went to watch the recording of the Stamps Montreal game, and when I turned on the recording, it was again a bunch of soccer stuff, and I was like, "This isn't 2 weeks in a row. I'm good." Just was like gonna just lose it, and then they switched it off, and it was simply a commercial or something, or the last of a show or something, and I was like, "Okay, fine, breathe."
Some good news. This week, the average attendance was just shy of 19,000. I've noticed that this was another week without a game in Saskatchewan or Winnipeg, but when I was looking back over it, they've been climbing every week. The averages where Winnipeg and Saskatchewan aren't playing at home has gone up and up and up every week, where it's gone up about maybe another 1,000 or so. But it was good and all round. The only one that was really at all disappointing was, no surprise, Ottawa, that had just over 14,000. But Edmonton had over 20,000, Hamilton had over 21,000, and even Montreal was over 19,000. So in a smaller stadium there. So I thought it was a good week.
Yeah, well,
Good to see.
the Montreal game was in Calgary, and
And it was not 19,000. Was it 19,000?
it did not look good. And the first thing I said as they went to the stadium was, "It's another bad crowd in Calgary." It just, to me, it did not look good at all. So that's mystifying in a city like that, where there's really it's the only sporting event in the summer. Sure, there's the CEBL. I get it, but they
that's only 2,000 people. That's not
right,
gonna
exactly. It's not going to impact. It shouldn't be impacting the Stampeders during the summer. And yeah, it's to me that's still very disappointing for that in that city. So they've got to do something. Hamilton, I was very, very pleased with the crowd. As I said last week, I thought it would be 15 at best, and it turned out to be very good. And I can understand why. We'll get into that. But basically what they did was, I spoke to some Hamilton fans while I was there, and if it was built into your season ticket package. So the season ticket holders primarily for Hamilton, for the Tiger Cats, showed up, and then X number of Argo fans showed up, and that brought the numbers up quite well. So yeah, it was a good crowd. And it looked like it by the time the game was over. So it was that was good. And Edmonton is a great sign that even for a game with BC, that they drew 20 plus, and that's on the up.
Definitely good news, yeah. And you're right about Calgary, because the other thing is that this is the game that the tickets would have been 58% off because of the big blowout win over Toronto.
Right.
And Bill apparently didn't bring them in that much.
I made a comment during that game because I was like, we give the MLSE a lot of crap for not caring about the Argos, but I don't think we hammer down hard enough on, what do they call this, CSEC, for not caring about the Stampeders. They do not care what happens to that team. They do not give them any money. And it's embarrassing. I feel really bad for Stampeders and their fans because they get no help from their ownership group.
Yeah, I agree. And that's been something that's been talked about for quite a few years. So
yeah, and if the fans are aware of that, and that may have something to do with the lower numbers. But anyway, don't want to dwell on that for too long here. What else did we have to talk about here? Getting towards the end of our news bit. So signings and releases this week. The Argos released Hendricks from the D-line last week, and then re-signed him this week, and also signed Sean Lemon. Because of the name Sean Lemon, I'll give either of you a chance to say whether you think that's a worthwhile signing or not.
But why?
Yeah.
It's just this is like Adam Bighill going to the Stamps last year. Yeah. Why?
I get the feeling it's like just trying to find somebody that can play.
Exactly. That's what I think it is. The surprising one to me was that they cut Hendricks to begin with, and then they re-signed him this week. As I said to you, old man, when we were talking earlier in the day, I didn't even know they re-signed him. So was that a negotiating ploy to get him to lower his why didn't they just renegotiate the contract then? Why would you cut a guy? And how does, it's such a vicious business. How you got to have skin as thick as an elephant to be a football player, where, they're just like, we don't care about you this week. Oh, next week we want you back. We love you. Come on back. Oh man, you just, Yeah, I feel for
Now
these guys.
sacrifice your body on artificial
Yeah.
turf for us. Like,
Oh no, look, we have real grass. It's okay. Come on
right?
back.
No, they don't. They're not at BMO anytime soon.
Oh yes, they are. Next game is at BMO.
Well, next
Yes.
game, but I
Yeah,
mean,
finally.
but you
Yeah.
know,
Well, like I said, though, that it's just, yeah, it doesn't give the appearance of a front office that's really on top of their game plan.
Yeah. And the Sean Lemon thing is, can he be effective? Does it cost you anything? Low risk, high reward, maybe. If he's got his motor back, there's 10 games left in the season. It wouldn't surprise me if he was in the top 5 sack leaders by the end of the year. When his motor's running, he can get to the quarterback. Now, he's 40 years old. So whether he can still get his motor running often enough to make it work, maybe, maybe not. But again, depending on what it costs you, well, at least you're getting somebody that knows the league, right?
Yeah.
Do you need another bad publicity guy? But he is a great teammate and a wonderful leader in the locker room. And maybe they need some of that. Maybe they just need some of that, like Calgary needed Adam Bighill last year for the same reason. So, MJ, your point may be just that, is that it is exactly, it's Adam Bighill, where you just need a guy that's been around, knows everything in and out, and can help your guys learn, coach and player at the same time type of guy, a glue guy.
this is how you get around the coach's cap.
Yeah, that too. That too.
I guess the question is, can you afford to have a player on your roster who's probably, if he's used ideally, is just going to be a long yardage rushing end? He won't be out there for most plays. He'll be out there when it's 2nd and 8 or longer.
But I'm sure he's on like a minimum or not much higher kind of contract as well. They can't be paying him a ton of money at this stage of the game. And also their defensive line has been pretty bad. Their defense overall has been pretty bad. They need the help. They need any help they can get at this stage.
I will agree with that. He's not going to play special teams. He's not, it's putting a load on everybody else by having a specialist body in there. What may be influencing this is, I notice we'll talk about it in the injuries later, but Chatfield did not participate at practice.
Yeah, he got dinged. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on from that, we also had another signing was Tyree Adams with the Lions after Nathan got hurt. And basically they said we have to have 3 quarterbacks on the roster. So we've signed Tyree and expect him to come in and play well if we need him. He knows the system somewhat. So who knows? He was somebody that I wish had gotten more of a chance to play. So maybe this will help.
And he always has been an intriguing prospect. So, and unfortunately had that injury that kind of took his career off to the left field. He could be something good. In the meantime, they signed put 2 NFL guys onto their negotiation list. So maybe one of them shows up as well. And with any luck, Nathan's not that injured, and they get him back in a few weeks. So
other notable ones, the Stamps released Benny Sapp III after the game this week. May or may not have had something to do with a hit along the sidelines. And the Alouettes have now released Mario Alford again. So I don't know who they're going to be looking at. Is Dedman ready to come back for them for the returner? I don't know, but Alfred's gone.
They released both returners today because I think it was Talbot. Yeah, Talbot got released today as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, after that game, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other one that you were just mentioning as we were talking about going into the show tonight, MJ, Isaiah Adams from the NFL. You seem more up on this than I was, so why don't you tell us?
Well, every time the Elks do something good, like have Dachshund races at halftime, then they sign some. If you don't know, Isaiah Adams, it came out today that he has been arrested for that was the other
firearms.
Firearms. I was going to say drug trafficking, but that was his accomplices. That's separate. He has firearm charges for illegal guns that were smuggled in from the U.S. And then after that, they added him to their negotiation list after the charges. So good job.
But
no, it's not. You don't even. What? Why, Ed Hervey? Why?
Yeah.
You don't need to do this. It's such bad. Stick to Dachshund races. You're doing okay. You guys are winning. Like, you don't need this.
Probably thought they could do it and it wouldn't get noticed.
Yeah.
It's just on the negotiation list.
The negotiation lists are public now.
Yeah.
You're this full circle, GT.
Yeah.
I was a little confused when I first heard that, because a Canadian on a negotiation list didn't seem right. But if I understand it, that if you're a Canadian player that goes and plays in the NFL for enough years, if you're also drafted by a CFL team, they only keep your rights for, I think it's 4 or 5 years, and then it becomes open rights. So if you're a Canadian whose rights aren't owned by anyone in the CFL at this point, you can also have them on your negotiation list.
Yeah.
It's not simply Americans.
Isn't that where Tevin Campbell, wasn't that his situation even in Castle? I think when they added him to the negotiation list, that was exactly that scenario. It's strange to hear it, but there is some kind of clause that you can get away with.
Yeah, exactly. And
Not the
then
best
one more little bit of semi-news, maybe not news, I don't know. MJ seems like she was all hyped up to go on a rant about PI this week. So we're taking our turns. It's your week to rant.
Okay, I have had it this year with PI. I've had it. I watched all week. It's been happening all year, and we have talked about it. But I am so sick of every time there's like a tiniest little bit of hand fighting. Receivers are standing up. I will explain my hand actions for podcast listeners. They are tossing, like mimicking tossing flags. They're trying to do their chest, oh, replay, review. And then they're crying at refs. They're people are walking around with their hands up in the air, freaking out. I have had it with the crybaby nonsense with that. But you know what? It's because there are some very soft PI calls this year, and they think they can get away with it, and they do. I'm sick of soft PI calls. You know what? Speaking, this is the NFL episode. Speaking of, the NFL lets them hand fight a lot more, and I wish the CFL would let them hand fight more, because it's slowing down the game, because they're reviewing all these PI. There's people having temper tantrums on the field. I have just had it. It's ruining my fun.
Well, we can't have that.
No!
We certainly cannot. Feelings on it are, I just want them to be consistent. I mean, if you're not going to allow hand fighting, if it's going to be 100% hands off, that's fine. If you're going to allow it, but be consistent, because it's not new this year. It is very dependent on the crew and that you get, and the game, and what kind of mood somebody's in. And I don't know, is the moon in the orbit of Aquarius or whatever. It's just something that, even within a single game, something that is, a flag is thrown right away and it's upheld, and it's obvious that was PI. A quarter later, the same thing can happen, and no, we're fine. So.
You know what? Every time I see a player doing this with his on his chest, they know what they do. They look like men's soccer players rolling on the ground, holding their leg, hoping for a call.
Yep, exactly.
That's what you look like, and it's embarrassing.
And that whole thing about this now, they're doing that because if you mimic throwing the flag, you could and should get a penalty for it.
Right.
They aren't, though.
And frankly, I think that they should expand that rule to anything that's an obvious signal that you disagree with a call, that you're making, basically you're calling the officiating into disrespect. You should be penalized for that. Just put it out there. If let the coaches make the decisions on the sideline.
The coaches would probably appreciate it anyways, because half the time they have to ignore the player, or they have to calm the player down or something like that, because they didn't go to review. It's I agree. Some of it is a little over the top. Over the top.
There seems to be a bit of a prima donna aspect to being a receiver in professional football. So I don't know if you'll ever get them out of that stuff. But anyway, thank you for that, MJ. I agree. I would love to see them start flagging the misconduct on people doing the whining and complaining. But we'll move on. Before we get to talking about the games, our own little games here, our fantasy stuff this week. I think it was a good week for us both again, MJ. I was up against Commish KD. Which way is it here? Commish KD, who was first place in the league. And I managed to pull off a win. And I felt good about that. Part of the reason was they had taken Nathan Rourke, who got no points at all. So that hurt them. However, I don't feel quite so much like I lucked into this one, because looking at the teams that they were putting together in the past, and what their tendencies were. I was pretty sure that they were going to take Rankin as their captain again and expect a lot of points out of them. So I took Rankin as a defensive call, but I did not take him as my captain. I took instead Alexander at quarterback as the captain. And so as it turned out, between those two things, even if Rourke had been in there, he would have had to score, 49.9 points for them to beat me, which without any doubling effect because he wasn't the captain. So I felt like this may be me patting myself on the back, but I felt like this was a strategy win. I felt like I fought my way through this one and knowing what BC could be doing. Next week, it's against the average. So any scores above the league average are wins, any scores below it are losses. How about you? You won your game this week, did you not?
I did. My son was away last week at my mom and dad's, so I was like, aha, this is my chance. This is my chance. I'm not going to pick Alexander. I picked Ford as my quarterback. And then my thing was, I was like, I'm going to pick Ford because he's only $8,000 and I'm going to load up on all the high-end guys. And all my high-end guys were like garbage. And I picked Philpott as my captain and that was stupid. And finally, I was like, I'm going to not pick a quarterback as my captain. I'm going to do it, guys. And then, so anyway, I did beat Rouge Daltz. Had a worse game than me, but I ended up with 103.2. But if I had made Ford my captain, I would have won the whole league this week.
Yep. Yeah. It's a learning experience, and being able to win when you don't have the perfect game is important too. That shows character, as they say. I will also say, since I was patting myself on the back here, it was also the second time in 3 weeks that I had the high score in the league, which confuses the hell out of me because the last 3 weeks, my scores have been within about 10 points of each other, and I've had 2 high scores and 13th place. Don't even try and figure out fantasy. All right, so that takes us now into the games that actually happened. And as we talked about, the first game had a doozy bit of news. The second offensive play for BC, Rourke got sacked and shoulder injury. He was out. Basically, the story of this game was that because Chase Bryce came in and threw a bunch of interceptions, but also got sacked 4 times by the Edmonton D. They were quite good. And BC held Rankin in check again. I think he had like 9 yards on the ground and some receiving, but not a whole lot. They made it close. In the end, BC did, even with Bryce in there, they managed to fight their way back into it. But as with many of the games this weekend, came up just short again and was Edmonton 19, BC 17. So not all that high scoring. How about you, MJ? You said you were there. What was it like in person?
Well, it was so nice. There were so many people there this time. I think there was almost 20,000 people. It's the biggest crowd I have sat in like about 5 years.
20,020.
There was an entire row of women behind me who had never been to a CFL game before, and they had all had their cowbells, so we all had a good time. You know who was not happy? My mom is a huge Elks fan. My dad and my husband are big BC Lion fans, and none of them were having a good time. No one was having fun at that game. My dad, again, missed even seeing Rourke play. My husband was like watching Rourke walk off the field, yeah. And then we were sitting by the scoreboard and we were keeping track of the rushing yards. And there was a lot of times on that scoreboard where there was -1 to -2 rushing for the Elks. So good job, BC. Rankin had like 7 carries for 9 yards. It was a tough game, and then Bryce threw like 4 interceptions, and the Elks should have blown them out of the water, right? Like, there is no way this should be close. They almost won. My dad and my husband were so excited at fourth quarter, so just short. The Elks, despite their best efforts, won. They should not be happy with how they played. I mean, a win is a win, and is a win, but that was not good. And then my little note, I feel like contacting the Elks because their in-game entertainment, they were playing music and had their drum line playing over top of any of Andre Prue's calls or explanations. So I was trying to figure out what was happening or when there was challenges, but then I couldn't even hear what was happening because there was a drum line and over of all the calls. So that was actually, if you were a new person to the CFL and it was your first game, you had no idea what was going on. But I'd had fun watching the Dachshund races at halftime. And then there was a whole section of dogs, and they kept showing the dogs on the screen, the big screen, and we all had a fun time.
I understand exactly what you mean about the PA. That was the first of the touchdown Kelowna games here. And it is frustrating when you try
This is not a
to
temporary
decipher
stadium.
just from
This is
what's there. But hey, and yeah, it might not have been pretty for the Elk, but I think the theme of this weekend is the old cliche. They don't ask how, they just ask how many, because that was most games this weekend.
yeah.
How about you, GT? Anything to say on this one?
Yeah, the Elks should just be like, take the money and run. Do the old Steve Miller, because this was just, they were that they should not have, they should have won that game by a huge margin given the circumstances of the game, and they didn't. And they looked pretty bad in a lot of ways. Their offense looked completely disjointed. BC did a great job. Both defenses did a pretty good job of keeping the other team off the field and not being able to do what they wanted to do. Fajardo was picking himself up off the turf almost the entire game. He was mad almost the entire game as he got thrown to the turf time after time. He was voicing his displeasure about it on a regular basis. MJ, back to what you talked about receivers. I think quarterbacks have to grow up a little bit too. If you take the hit, get up and throw the ball again. You don't start throwing your hands in the air and whining about late hit every time somebody touches them. So it's a little bit of theatrics there. But anyways, I just thought Edmonton did not look great. And they won by 2 points against a guy who's threw 4 interceptions in his first game in the CFL. Really, his first full game, 2 plays in, wasn't even prepared, didn't have reps throughout the week and wasn't ready to go. And it was obvious. And yet you only won by 2 points. And you're lucky to get that, to be quite honest. You're lucky to win that game. And Edmonton, I know that their offensive line has been in flux the last couple of weeks, but they've been letting a lot of guys through too. I don't think that offensive line's been playing up to their pay grade, because they spent a lot of money on that offensive line. I think some not cracks are beginning to show, but Edmonton is not, like I've said before, I don't believe they're the best team in the league, even though their record says they are. I don't think they're even, I've got them, I don't have them there anyways at number 1 this week. So
they should have had 40 points on BC.
Yeah.
Their O-line situation doesn't get a lot better because they do have O'Donnell listed as doubtful for this weekend. I would mention 2 plays that I really caught my eye on. The first one was not the first TD BC touchdown, which was Horvath just going in from the 1, got me some points in penalty, so I'll take that. But leading up to that, there was a catch by Keon Hatcher, a deep one down I believe it was
that
down
was
the
a
middle.
beautiful catch.
I was sitting
was
right
incredible.
there.
Wow, to be
That
right
was
there
the
and see that.
best. Yeah.
What a fantastic body control for the catch. And then the other one was the Elk opening TD. They tried running it in with Rankin and, of course, didn't go anywhere. And then, so they went to the pass, and it looked like the pressure was going to kill it off, but Cody managed to somehow scramble around and do some of the stuff he does and hit Luther for it.
My fun fact about this is that Dennis McKnight was standing on the field with his hands on his hips, looking very angry anytime the special teams were on the field, because Williams kept running into his own players on the return.
Yeah.
And he was just standing there with his hands on his hips, just looking so angry. And I was like, suicides for coming for you.
Did your man Blanchard miss a field goal this week, MJ?
He missed 1.
Yes, I thought he did. It was a chip shot too, correct?
I mean, if we're going to compare who missed field goal weekend, it is not Blanchard who you need to be upset about.
I know, but there was a few kickers, but he was one of them. Yes, I agree.
He was one of them. Yeah, it was a tough weekend for kickers. And then my other thing is, again, Cody outrushed Rankin. Edmonton has to have another plan if the rush is being blocked.
I've been saying it since last year. You need to have a spy on him. And if you can have a spy on him and shut him down, that whole offense just grinds to a halt.
Saskatchewan's probably watching that tape, right?
I don't necessarily know that you need I don't agree that you need a spy on him. You've got to get him stopped in the first 5 to 7 yards.
Yeah.
Because he's gotten better at being patient and at waiting for the holes to open up and getting through them. But teams like BC that just don't let him get any head of steam up, they're stopping him in that first 5 or 6 yards. If he gets into the second level, he seems like he can make anybody miss. So that's, to me, that's the key of it.
I feel like BC had him stopped in the backfield.
Most of the time.
Like, they wasn't even 5 yards. It was in the back as he was negative rushing yards for a lot of that game.
And that goes back to that offensive line that I mentioned earlier, where they were just allowing BC, we talked about them earlier in the season, have no defensive line help at all. And now the last 2 weeks against Edmonton, they've just been a terror. So something's going on, or whether it's scheme or whether it's against that team or matchups or whatever, but they've turned into a pretty awesome little unit there.
If you looked at what they did that worked really well, was they weren't blitzing and they weren't even run blitzing. Because the thing with Rankin is, if you put on a heavy run blitz and somehow they pop him through a hole, he's gone, and you never get. So they were playing 4 rush and having their linebackers keying on Rankin first, being able to fill those gaps. I sure hope the Riders can do that, but we'll see. I'm going to go on to the next one. Montreal 38 at Calgary 32. And again, a game where it was just all over the place. Teams were playing well, teams were playing poorly at different times and different spots. Calgary fell behind by 22 points and ended up losing by 6, which seems like a great effort, but they lost by 6. It was too much to overcome. And then at the end of when they were within a minute to go and they had the ball down deep in Montreal's end, a fumble from Brooks coughed it up. Montreal jumped on it and just was able to kneel out the clock, basically. So it was an entertaining game, but I wouldn't call it a great game by either team, frankly. They both made mistakes. Thies, as a running back, was fantastic. He carried 19 times for 123 yards and a touchdown, and I think he had probably the best run I've seen all season from a running back, it was only like 14 yards up the middle, but I think he bounced off every player on the Calgary defense at least once and several of them twice. It was just a hard nose, I'm not going down sort of run that I absolutely loved.
Well, he absolutely trucked Flora Omolottum, and that was like, my goodness, that's not easy to do. And Owen wasn't even stood up; he was down low to make a tackle, and Tice just trucked him. So that was the most impressive part of that. And he ran hard. He had a great day, and Calgary did not. Calgary did not.
Well, I thought that when they came out in the second half and went back to their running game, it turned the game around.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But tell us more about that, GT.
Yeah, no, Mills had a great game. Calgary, they looked like they came out flat. They should have been totally ready for this game, and they looked like they were flat. VA last week, I thought he was in his head last week. This week, I just thought he was off. He just didn't look like he was on target. He was overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys, wasn't quite where he needed to be in the first half in particular. And they weren't using Mill line. That much vaunted defensive line was not getting to Davis Alexander at all. I thought Montreal's offensive line did a terrific job all game long. I thought they gave him lots of time and I just kept saying, he's got too much time. He's got too much time. Look, I completed. So Montreal was full value because they came out and took it to them. But then in the second half, the reverse happened, and it was like Montreal wasn't ready coming out of the second half. Maybe they thought they had the game in hand, but Calgary made the adjustments, and they played very, very well in the second half. They outscored them 32-10 in the third quarter and most of the fourth quarter. It was, a completely different game when it was tied up at 32. But then again, they couldn't stop them when they needed to get the ball back after tying the game up. Montreal goes down, scores a touchdown, goes up 32, but missed the extra point. That allows Calgary, to have a shot. And, you don't have to have a point to make a point if you get the point. And but Calgary had the opportunity and they marched the ball all the way down. And that was a fumble. That was nothing but. It was just a fumble. Yep. He might have been going for the first down. I thought he had the first down already. So I was like, get down. You got 26 seconds. Don't worry about getting an extra 2 yards. Just get down on the ground and you're at the 16 or whatever anyways. So, but a football guy, his first reaction is always try to get extra yards. So that's what Brooks
Yeah.
did, and he fumbled the ball. It was a legitimate fumble. I wasn't. Then my recording cut out again this week. So seconds, but I assumed they lost, so I wasn't worried about it.
Stopped that game with 35 seconds left, or
Yeah.
38 anyway. So you didn't really miss anything. But that's what I'm sorry. That's what Montreal does, though. They like fall asleep in the third.
Yeah.
I've noticed this year because I have to watch these games, and they fall asleep, and then like about 8 minutes left in the fourth, they're like, "Oh, we should keep playing."
Right. That's the sign of a dominant team. That's how Winnipeg
Yeah.
was for the last few years, where they would just like, whatever, we're going to got this game under control, and you can make all the noise you want in the third. But in the fourth, we're running Brady into your face, and that's all there is to it. And you're not going to come back. We're going to chew up the clock. Montreal does it slightly differently, but I agree with you, MJ. It's similar in that way. And I thought there was a couple of things that I just wanted to talk about. Last week, we talked about a player coming to, where we disagreed on who takes a bad penalty and when you do and when you don't. And last week I stood up in defense of Demery taking a penalty when VA got hit. And this week he just took a dumb penalty that hurt his team. And it was like the defensive lineman well after the play. And it took them out of rhythm and out of a touchdown opportunity, and they had settled for a field goal. So it's, that was a really bad play. The call on the sideline that made Dickinson lose it, and then I lose it again after the game when he was calling out the ref. I thought it was a kind of a weak call. I thought there was a couple of weak calls this week overall. But, it's one of those where he got trucked. I mean, he got crushed when Sapp came across and hit him. That was loud. That was a pop. You heard that all the way across the screen. What was it? In the head? I didn't even think it was in the head. I thought it was on the shoulder. Was he already going out of bounds? Yeah, he was, but he was still in the field of play. So it wasn't like he was on the sideline. If you're still going vertical up the field, as far as I'm concerned, you should be allowed to get hit. So I thought it was fairly weak, and then it was, they didn't call it. They called it a shoulder to the head. They didn't even call it a roughing or unnecessary roughness. The penalty was literally announced as a shoulder to the head, and I'm like, that's not a penalty. That's not that you can't call. If they had called it unnecessary roughness, you go okay, but a shoulder to the head isn't a real penalty. So call it what it is. Like, call it by the proper terminology at least, and then maybe Dickinson wouldn't be losing his mind.
That may be. I saw someone on social media talking about that this week and actually quoted the rule, and it doesn't say that a shoulder to the head is a penalty. But it says a blow to the head and doesn't specify what body part it has to be, whether it should have been called or not. But it did fit within what the rule book says.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. But if you're calling it that, call it unnecessary roughness, because that's the name of the penalty. What is this penalty? You just make this up as you go? What is a shoulder to the head? There's no such thing. I think that was Dickinson's point, right?
Yeah.
They didn't deserve to win this game. They lost it, and they could have won it, but they didn't deserve to win because they started off as badly as they did. It looked like they were going to not score a single point in the first half. And you can't win games if you don't score a single point in the first half. So that's my view of the game.
All right, let me put my cowboy hat on.
Okay.
All right, now I'm going to speak. I don't think this game was officiated fairly against the Stampeders. We talked about that. A VA got hit in the head again. And I don't understand why he is a quarterback that is allowed to be hit in the head when it seems like other quarterbacks getting hit is a bigger deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it upsets me that it seems like there's preferential treatment towards some people and not others. And I'm not sure why he has been deemed to not have preferential status as a quarterback. He is a starting quarterback. He was running for his life most of that game. I felt like he was running. It was really hot there, and he was running for his life. I felt so bad for him. And my note is if Calgary had played that entire game, they would have won. Anyway, okay. Cowboy hat off. They are like Montreal had terrible special team. Mario Alford and Talbot, there was one point where they both were looking at each other and pointing at who was trying to take a kick. Like, what a mess on special teams for them. And they are dangerous with Cole Speaker back.
Yes.
He had a monster first half there. Oh, man, I was like, this is great. Just great. Yeah. And then this game had more rushing yards in the first quarter than the game the previous night had the entire game.
In total, yes.
And Jalen technically won the Philpott Bowl, but lost the game.
Yes.
Yes.
But their dad
Yes.
was there and a bunch of their family there, and they were showing them, and that was really nice. And to the man who told me that I was speaking in a sarcastic tone about the Philpott Bowl, please be advised that this is my regular tone of voice.
There we go. Yes. Well, and as far as special teams go, I mean, Alfred ripped off a 60-yard punt return, but it was all sideways. He started on the left side and took it right across the entire field before going out for 1-yard gain, which may be why he was released today. I don't know. It felt to me like they were just, both teams were, I don't know, just seemed like there was something in the water. That Brooks fumble, I don't put that necessarily on him. He was trying to get some extra yards, but that was a beautiful play from the defender coming up behind him. It wasn't sloppy ball control or anything. It was just a good play on it. But you got sort of the flip side. There was a position where Montreal was up by 6 points, and this was down within 5 minutes to go, and I forget, they were about their own 20 or something, 3rd and 1 to go, and instead of running Crum in and running their normal short yardage offense, they put these behind there to try and get it, and he gets stacked up, and Calgary takes over the ball in the 20 and scores the tying touchdown.
That was an unbelievable
why do you
play.
do that at that time?
He might have ran 30 yards though. This is the Anthony Calvillo play call experience. It's going to be brilliant, or you're going to get stuffed.
Yeah, but there's a time for that. When you need that yard, just
I don't know. I appreciate aggressive play calling. I mean, there was like that turnover on downs. Like, I appreciate when like you're going for it, you're trying to do things, and you're not kicking field goals from the 3-yard line.
Oh no, I like that too. I'll give you that. But there's a time when to try.
I guess they were just thinking that Calgary wouldn't be able to
play.
I don't know.
Yeah, I said the same thing about Condell in their game with Winnipeg. That there are times when both him and whether it comes from Calvillo or it's Moss that makes the decision on these things. And something like that feels more like to me. It's almost like they overthink themselves. We know what will work, but so does the defense. So we're going to do something different. And quite often it doesn't work at all. To me, that was just a straight up coaching error. And if they lost that game, it should have been put on whatever coach made that choice. But it was also a bad game for penalties. They both took 9 penalties and almost identical yardage. Calgary took 106 Calgary had 110, Montreal had 106 yards. And Montreal did take 45 yards in penalties on one play late in the game when Calgary was trying to score, because they took a 30-yard PI and then a roughing the passer on top of it. And that, basically set Calgary up for another one of their touchdowns in that comeback. Full credit to Calgary for the second half comeback. But just as a lot of the Montreal scoring in the first half came from Calgary mistakes, a lot of the Calgary scoring, to me, came from Montreal mistakes. So it's just a weird game like that. And then I think the last thing that I had on it was that there was at one point, it looked to me the way Alexander was moving around out there, it looked like he was being cautious with his hamstring. So it was hard to tell. But then all of a sudden there was one of the points where the Calgary pressure came hard, and he pulled off basically a Trey Ford escape act. Just an incredible scrambling, and then completed to Tyson downfield for whatever it was, 30, 40 yards. So, yeah, they seem to be able to play when they need to.
VA in his presser afterwards wearing a Calgary Wild jersey. He's a big supporter of women's sports, so that in his city. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Gotta like that support.
Yeah, and he went to 17 touchdowns without an interception.
Yes, he's tied for a record.
He's tied with Ricky Ray for the record now with 17 touchdowns without an interception. And Davis Alexander went over Darian Durant for most completed passes without an interception at 230-ish type of thing.
I think it was 323 actually, but it's a high number.
Yeah. It's a high number. So that was also, Yeah.
My sister texted me about this because she was very excited. I was like, "Oh, where are you to talk about your records now?" She was so excited about Alexander beating that.
Yes. Yeah. So record-setting night and entertaining, but just slightly weird, as was the whole weekend, including the next game, which was Toronto 23 at Hamilton 24, and this was Milanovic deciding he was going to give Trey Ford a try and actually seemed to call a reasonably good game for Trey. I think my favorite point in this whole game was before the game started when TSN first came on with the broadcast. One of the first shots they had was Keandre Smith there whispering away in Trey's ear. Just remember, I'm here. I'll be here if you need an outlet. Just keep in mind I'm here. So you like that. And I thought Trey looked pretty good, and it was a well-played game. In the end, this one was one where Hamilton, I guess by all rights, probably shouldn't have won this because Toronto set themselves up with a walk-off field goal from, I think, basically about the 20, so it would have been a less than 30-yard field goal, and Haralahu just missed it badly. And this is where the new rules came into effect. Missed it badly, the kick went out the back of the end zone, no point, Hamilton wins. How's the Hamilton fans liking this one, MJ?
You mix some blood, sweat, and tears of joy, and that's why I call a rally cry. Oh, this game. I think there was a lot more people there because Trey Ford got announced as the starter instead of Jake Dolagala. So the Ticats could not practice last week because of the air quality. So Trey had not had first team reps on the field with any of those receivers and went out and pulled a rabbit out of his hat. This was Trey Ford, at his best.
Waiting for the D word.
He's got he is lucky that Kenny can climb ladders. That one pass, I thought he was over the line of scrimmage and Kenny climbed up and got that for that touchdown, and they were kind of off. Toronto played a bad game, right? There's no reason that Trey should be outgunning Chad Kelly. No reason, but he did. And I have a whole page full of notes, but there was some nasty face masks in this game, and one was on Trey, and it was bad. And there was another one where, where's my note? But I think there was a PI and a roughing the passer, and they got was it this game that they got 59 yards, or was that?
That was Calgary.
That was Calgary.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, Scott apparently was taking some advice from some other people about how to play call for RPO offense. So I'm glad he kind of swallowed his pride a bit and decided to play call for Trey, because look what happened. That was a home game for the Argos in Hamilton, where Hamilton was in dire straits, right? That was going to be depressing, so depressing. So thank you, Scott, for I was wrong. You can play call RPO. And so thank you, because look what happened. And that was without practice again, and they did it. I was waiting to see Harallahu's name on your releases today. He missed a 2. He missed and he's not been, and because they kept showing the hold on TV. They're let's zoom in on the hold as if it's the center's fault or the...
Well, it was a new holder, so that's why they were...
Hold is perfect.
The holds were...
I saw it very up close. Thank you, TSN. Let's make sure that it was actually the kicker's fault, and it was.
Yes. And he missed a convert, or else it would have been tied at that point anyway.
And then so I was watching this game, and for a second I thought they tied it. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to overtime. And then I was like, wait, no, new rules. We won. I'm like, we won. That's the only time I like new rules, was this one specific game where it helped me. Also, Dean Faithful in Paris on the weekend hit a 56-yard field goal for his football team and told the reporter he can hit from 65. So maybe Argos will be on the phone with him.
Maybe. He certainly must have been doing a lot of isometrics on that leg from his 35-yard days in the CFL. I saw the field goal he kicked. It looked good. It looked good. They have their goalposts at the front of the end zones as well over there. Yeah. Well, let me stop you here when we're talking about Hamilton. I'm going to first of all tell you a little story about way back in the day from when I was coaching. At one point, I was coaching a junior bantam team, which is 12 and 13-year-olds. We were playing 12-man football. You had to have 18 people to qualify as a team. And we had 16 players that really, really wanted to play. So they talked 2 of their friends into coming out, and their friends said, we'll come out and practice and be part of the team as long as we don't have to play in games. So we basically were playing with 16 players. We had 5 kids that were at 12 and 13 that were between 190 and 200 pounds. So those were our 5 offensive linemen, and they rotated our defensive tackle spots through the game and went 2 ways with it like that. And that was it. And then we had a fullback that was about 160, and I had him to play the line if anybody got hurt. So that was good. So we get up in game, and one of our linemen gets hurt and can't go back in. So in goes my fullback. And then he gets hurt. And literally, I've got nobody else that's ever played line for anything, and I'm having to deal with this as a coach on the sideline. I'm going, who goes in? And we got this receiver who's 100 pounds soaking wet. And Dave says to me, Coach, I'll go do it. Okay, go play guard for us, Dave. What are we going to do? And he went out there for the last quarter and basically got in people's ways, and we still won the game. Now, I mention this because the Hamilton Tiger Cats lost both offensive tackles in this game and ended up playing Max Mang, their global tight end, at 265 pounds at guard. And he gave up one bad sack, but basically he got out there and got in people's ways, and it was enough to kind of hold them in the game.
They had him against Holly, and I was like, are you trying to have him murdered? And then they eventually switched it up so he wasn't against Holly anymore. But I was like, you guys, you're lucky Trey's back there, because if Bo was back there, he would have died.
Yes. Well, and it wasn't, they kept Mang in the same spot. So it was Toronto who decided they weren't going to keep putting Holly on him, which surprised me because
the one field goal that Legio missed, they were trying to pull guys. They were physically pulling guys all across the line, trying to figure out who's lining up where. And then I think it just got in Legio's head and he missed. But yeah, boy, I was like, whoa, there's Mang. Oh, he's in a different number. Oh, he's on the line.
Yeah. It was a game of adversity for that offensive line.
Well, the cards were really stacked against them, and they pulled it off. Tie-Cat magic.
Hopefully Barrow's not serious and will be back, because it was hard to tell. He was walking around, but Reed, who's an excellent left tackle, they took off in a splint, so he'll be gone for a bit. I hope they've got some others on speed dial.
Good thing Trey can run 100 yards a game and can get flushed out and make it.
Yeah. Jump in here, JT. You were at the game.
You were there. You saw this in person. Magic in person.
I think television versus reality is a whole different game, because that wasn't magic. That was just a horrible game by Toronto. That's what that was. They scored on their opening drive, and then they didn't score again. It was outrageous how bad Toronto was. So, yes, Trey did a pretty good job. And yes, he escaped. And yes, he ran a few times. And yes, he threw some passes. But it was about Toronto. They looked really bad from the opening drive until the last drive, when they finally had an opportunity, because Legio missed a field goal and also got no points. So let's not put it all on Halaharu or whatever on Lee, because it gave the Argos the opportunity, because Legio did the exact same thing. He also kicked it right through the end zone, and his was not as bad. I will say this. The wind was also a big factor, because it was blowing quite heavily in one direction or the other, and the Argos had the wind in the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't know how the point after, because it was just like he missed. How did he miss? And then he missed again to finish the game, and it was from the exact same spot, and he kicked it the exact same direction, and it went the exact same way, only he kicked it harder. So it was still in the air when it left the end. I mean, I would have, at least, if you're going to try to do last year's game handle, which is like kick it through the end zone to tie it with a single point, then at least you got to put it up in the air now, so that it falls into the end zone, so it's playable. You can't. So I think that was part of a miscalculation, but he did miss 2 in a row, absolutely, from the exact same spot. Hamilton didn't look great. Toronto looked worse. It was Toronto home game in Hamilton against Hamilton. There was nothing from the Argos to suggest this was a home week. You're 40 minutes down the road. There was no Toronto cheerleaders. There was no Toronto mascot. It was all of Hamilton's in-stadium announcers. There was none of Toronto's announcers. It was a Hamilton home game. There was no blue. There was nothing to indicate that this was a Toronto home game. You were 40 minutes down the road. You couldn't
Even
bring,
less, because they
yeah,
were in all their stuff's in Guelph.
yeah. So you couldn't even, that was really bad on the Argos in my again, another miss by MLSE. When it wouldn't have cost you a ton of money to be able to just at least show your fans that made the trip that you still cared enough to try to make
Yeah.
it a home game. They didn't. So the fans showed up. There was a lot of Argos fans there, so it was a good crowd. It was like a Labor Day game in that the two factions were going at each other between the two chants back and forth. So it was good. It was fun in the stands. My tickets ended up once I got them last Wednesday, 3 days before the event. They ended up almost identically where I would be sitting normally at BMO. So that was terrific. Earlier, I spoke to some Ticats fans that were sitting around me, and they said that this game came as part of their package and indicated that they didn't have a choice whether they wanted or not. It simply was added into their package, which is a bit of a scam on their behalf. They should have had the opportunity to say, no, I don't want. But at the same time, and perhaps that's why they couldn't rearrange the tickets until the last minute. But somehow, again, to me, that's still not well. But overall, it was good. Had terrific food. Found a great spot to eat, the Hamilton Stadium. So that was, yeah, it was not a great game, but it was still a semi-exciting game is how I would put it. And because of the ending of it, it was great that we had, 2 times that the new rules showed up. So interesting.
From what I've heard, don't take this as gospel, but from what I've heard, Saskatchewan and Winnipeg was the same thing. The Toronto home game was added as part of the season ticket pass, and you paid for it. I said my favorite part of the night was Keandre whispering in Trey's ear. My second favorite part of the night was Glenn Suter saying, well, Kelly's known for trying to fit it into tight windows. And I thought, that's the nicest way I've ever heard someone say he really can't make very good reads. Other teams have got pressure on him, but this was the first time he looked rattled from either the pressure or the coverage. He didn't look like he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he was not on, and he was getting run, and he was running for his life most of the night, and he was not happy in a couple of cases. Again, calling for the refs to give him the call and so on and so forth.
He's been doing that all year.
Exactly, and as we talked about, it's becoming a little tiresome from a lot of these quarterbacks. He was definitely under pressure all night. Hamilton's defense I thought played really, really well. Castatonis didn't start the game, and I was a little worried, but then he showed up on and off. So he must be a bit nicked because he wasn't he was in and out of the game at some point, or it's a ratio thing. But I can't believe he would be affected by the ratio. Yeah, it was a good game. It was fun to be at. It was nice to be back. It was nice to be back watching football again because we haven't had the opportunity live in this marketplace until this game. So, well, that's not true. I could have been in Hamilton earlier, I guess. That's true.
You could have been.
But
The Ticats did a big social media post about like an Airbnb rental ad for Hamilton Stadium for the Argos. It was so fun.
Yeah, see, some of the social media teams are good at this stuff. I wish there was more of that.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that was encouraging for Hamilton fans in this game, despite the fact that fourth quarter the defense didn't look as good, looked rattled, for 3 quarters they played excellent. And so you can see Trey doesn't have to come in there and be Bo, and he doesn't have to come in and be a world beater for them to win. He needs to come in and be competent and be able to score some points, and they've got a good enough defense that it will carry them if they need to. They'll lose some games that they might have won with Bo in there, but they could easily go, 500 or a little better the rest of the season. And this idea that they're done from the playoffs now, maybe not.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It showed a lot of that. And I was thinking, or full disclosure that, about the crossover being in play, maybe not, it depends, because, there could, as you just said, they could win a bunch more games still, if Milanovic continues to coach, as MJ suggested that he did this, but if he allows Trey to be just what he, not too wild, but wild enough, then that's with the balance, right? Hamilton could still be a dangerous.
Trey he was a little more in the pocket than he usually is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they kind of had a little meeting of the minds and came to an agreement there. So it's good.
No, it is. The other thing that unfortunately watching on TV, you don't really get to see exactly what the defense is doing for coverages. The announcers will give you some idea of it sometimes, but it's not like watching all game. And I wish I could do that for the last 3 Toronto games, because I'm wondering, does this show that defenses are maybe figuring out how to defend that long ball attack that Kelly did so well with at the start of the season? Because it's 3 weeks in a row that 3 different defenses have played them, and every week he's been less successful.
Was it this game where a Tie-Cat, DB just, punched the ball out of a receiver's hands on the long ball?
Yeah. But
I think so,
that,
yeah.
if you're in position, that's great. But I'm thinking that they must have figured out what they're running on that back end, because Calgary held them down quite well. Then Winnipeg did even better, and Hamilton, especially for the first 3 quarters, did even more. The defensive coordinators in the league figured out what they're doing with this now.
Defenses are catching up finally. It's week 7.
It'll certainly be an interesting this week against that BC backfield.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, Toronto defense is pretty bad. They look pretty bad. So whether Quick was the right hire there out of Montreal, but I don't think he's got that defense going at the speed that it needs to be at. One other thing that I will talk about very briefly on the game, you couldn't hear the announcements from the stadium. For some reason, the referees were not mic'd properly. And at the beginning, you couldn't hear them at all. And then they were garbled. And then the announcers were terrible. Then there was the injury. It was just before the missed field goal. So there was a lot. Okay, so Toronto drove down after Legio missed. Toronto drove the field, and they threw a complete pass. And it took them down to around the 20-yard line. And then Hamilton had an injury. And there was a long pause while everybody was focused on the injury. And maybe on television it'll look different, but here's how it was everybody was looking at the injury on the field. The ball was at the 20-yard line. Took at least 3 to 4 minutes, so it was a long time before they cleared the injury off of the field. And all of a sudden, or first down at the 20, when the injury happened, the injured players take them off the field, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 15 at the 45. And it's like, what happened? There was no call. There was no explanation. It was just all of a sudden, Toronto's backed up 25 yards from where they were before when the call was. And it was like the entire stadium was like, what just happened? What is going on here? And finally, it had to be, okay, I assume Toronto got called for procedure and became 2nd and 15, and that pass was no longer valid or something. That's the only thing I could think of, because it was not, and it was just a nightmare all game trying to figure out the calls in the stadium. It was really, really tough, but that one was really, really bad. You could just feel it. And like, what happened? And no explanation.
That's bad, because from what MJ said, that's 2 out of the 4 games where the PAs did not work well. And come on, professional football. That should be a basic thing. I don't know. I don't
remember, because I was disassociating at that time.
Yeah. So was the Hamilton defense, apparently.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, no.
Yeah. I had a great time. I mean, it was on TV, so you could sort of see it. But I had a great time just picturing the reaction of Hamilton fans when that field goal was missed. Because I was fairly sure there'd be that 2 seconds of shock, and then just...
Yeah.
Because we all thought it was going to overtime.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait, no.
Yeah.
And
I imagine, knowing the reputation of Hamilton fans, they probably were very, very sympathetic to Hairolahu as he was coming off the field.
I'm sure.
Yes. Okay. Jumping on the last game of the they don't ask how, they ask how many weekend, was Winnipeg 36 at Ottawa 34. The bulk of this scoring was in overtime, actually. And my note said, Ottawa finds new ways to lose games. Because, I mean, they went up. They started the game. I didn't see the most of the first quarter, thanks TSN. Let's quit whining about that. But they traded field goals for a while. And then late in the half, Ottawa got an extra field goal and then got a chance to put a touchdown in to go up by 10 points, 19-9. Then they came out in the second half. and had basically the ball on the 2-yard line and ran short yardage 3 times and didn't get in and turned it over on downs. And then after Winnipeg had to punt, they came back and were close to scoring and threw an interception in the end zone. So I would say between either of those, it should have been at least 33-9, but it wasn't. It was 20. They finally got a touchdown in, and it became 26-9, and then they didn't score again until overtime. They gave up 17 points to Winnipeg. It looked to me a lot like Elk games from 2 or 3 years ago, where they'd be in it, and then there was just so much self-doubt that once they started to crumble, they crumbled. And yeah, there was some positive stuff. Winnipeg tried blitzing him at the end of the end of the first half and into the second half, and he beat the blitz nicely quite a few times. But there was also stupid stuff. They went through the 2 mini games of the overtime and both got field goals in those. Neither could do much offensively at all. Then they went into the 2-point converts, and Ottawa, for some reason, decides they're going to run a soft zone against a 2-point convert twice and lose the game on it. I don't know. Who wants to go first?
I thought this was a pretty bad game by both teams, and neither team, this was the game that should have been a tie because neither team deserved to win. And
That's exactly what my note says.
Yes. And it wasn't a tie
Like,
because
if
of new
any
rules
game
again.
deserved to have a tie.
Yeah.
For all the hype we wanted to have, neither of the quarterbacks looked good or bad enough to feel sympathy or empathy for. It was just not a great game. It was kind of I'm not sure about the overtime. I've heard various people talk about it so far, whether they like the new rules or not. I wasn't, I was okay with it, but I never had a problem with the tie. So I would have been fine if it had been tied after the 2 regulation overtime, whatever drives, whatever the case may be. So I wonder though, I have this question about this in overtime. You get those points. So the score becomes the points that you score in overtime, which in this case was a few, right? They scored a bunch of points each. How does that impact late if there's a tie at the end of the season? You're now into points for and again. It's like you're getting extra points that another team doesn't have the opportunity in another game to match. That's something I've never been fond of. I almost feel like you should get 2 points in the standings for the win, but your points should just be whatever you had at the end of regulation when it comes down to tiebreakers later on or something like just because I get it, but it's an inflated score that I don't think is a real score.
Now, I kind of agree with you on that. It's also true within fantasy. You get the points for that are in overtime too, which I guess it is what it is. I thought what you said about it not being a great game by either team, I thought that sort of the whole feel of this game was encapsulated late in the game when Winnipeg was trying to come back and they were still down a little bit, but they score a touchdown, which is great. Now I think they were down by 3 at that point, or maybe 6. I don't know. Anyway, they kick off and they kick it out of bounds. So Ottawa gets the ball on the 50-yard line. Okay, so this is good. They can go and get some more points and increase their lead, but no, they can't do anything with it. Well, okay, at least we'll pin them deep, and their punter shanks it out of bounds and takes a 10-yard penalty, and they get the ball basically almost at midfield again. So it was like both teams just kept giving each other chances to do something. Ottawa, there were 5 or 6 times they should have had interceptions. A couple of them would have ended the game outright and just flat out drop balls. You're looking, I want to hear you, MJ.
No, well, when you are losing, okay, I've sat in Commonwealth Stadium. I have cheered for a 1-17 team. When you are in that hole, those things just seem to happen to you. Balls just bounce off your hands. Like, they go off your tip. It's just, nothing is going to go your way when it's like that. And they could have easily won that game 4 times. They had 4 dropped interceptions between like the end of the 4th and then OT. But it's going to do that. The football gods are going to, it's just the vibes are bad and nothing's going to go your way.
Yeah, I agree.
That's how it is.
When in hockey, they call clutching the stick a little too tight. Well, everything matters a little bit more.
Yeah, you're not in the flow, right? You're
Yeah.
overthinking things, just even a fraction of a second, you're overthinking it, and it's just yeah.
I did see social media stuff about, or the post game comments by Jake, where people seem to be pretty upset that he didn't seem to be pissed off about the losses. He was more like, we're doing okay, we're getting better. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I watched for 4 years in Calgary. That's Jake Mayer. Welcome to the Jake Mayer experience. He just will never get you to the point where he's just angry enough to take a team and shake and throttle them. And I think that's what you need at some point. Somebody who's just, and it can't be the coaches. It has to be the players. There has to be a player there that takes them and throttles the rest of the team and shakes them out of that lethargic state that you just talked about, MJ, and gets them back into like being mad at themselves. And I don't know that they're mad at themselves. I think it looks like they're kind of already checked out, as we talked about.
Cody did that in Montreal, and he's doing it in Edmonton this year. You know, a little fire and brimstone QB in there, just short term, right? Just
It's interesting because part of the report early on was that Dinwiddie went with Mayer rather than Brown because Brown was too laid back for him, and he wanted a quarterback that had more fight and anger in him, and that's not what I've seen with Mayer at any point. But yeah, it was very much sort of almost like, what you gonna do?
There's a difference between being laid back and being unflappable.
Yeah.
And maybe Jake, I don't know. I don't see him at practice. I don't see him talking to people on the sidelines. Maybe he's on more of the unflappable side than the other. But yeah, all I know is that he was running for his it was tough. It was tough both sides. Winnipeg played down. I don't know if Winnipeg's just that bad or if they played down, but it was a bad game.
It wasn't impressive.
No, I was just going to say, I think this week we'll show a bunch of teams. This is an interesting week coming up with the matchups that are going on and where people are in the standings and how people are playing. I think this is going to be an interesting weekend and show us a lot about where these teams are. Is Calgary any good or not? Because right now you can't tell. Is Winnipeg playing above their heads, or did they get lucky in the last 2 games or not? We don't know. I think that's still is that a 1-game fluke from Trey Ford, or is he the guy that can carry Hamilton? We'll find that. Is BC already written off, or can they win and get back in in some kind of rhythm? Because if they lose this weekend to Toronto, they're basically done. And Ottawa is done pretty. And is Toronto, after these last 3 weeks, are they any good or not? We don't. Well, we'll find out, because they certainly looked pretty good even when they were losing in those first 3 weeks, and now they look pretty bad in the last. And even Edmonton and Saskatchewan is going to be a really interesting game to see which team comes out. Sorry, I'm jumping into next week's games, but I just feel like this weekend coming up is going to show us a lot about what's going with across the league.
Yeah, I agree. And let's get to that. But just because I mentioned earlier, I thought Condell was also doing this stuff of outthinking himself. And again, they're winning, but they're not using Brady the way that I would expect him to be used. Later in the game, they go to him some, but I'm watching that first half and they're just not running the ball. Oh, a running play. Great. Wait a minute. They're running with Chris Isaac. Yeah. Yeah. And they split Brady out as a receiver, and you've got a weapon. Use them.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get on to the stuff talking. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I will just sum up this game for us in a little play sequence that summed up how this game was just ridiculous. Okay. Fletcher got a grade 2 roughing penalty on Mayer, and it was a 59-yard net gain. But then they got stuffed at the goal line, and then the Bombers went 2 and out on that. And that just sums up how that game went for everyone.
Yep.
And then another record. Guys, another record. Willie Jefferson is the only 80-80 player. He has 80 sacks and 80 pass knockdowns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. He still does impact the games. Yes, he does. Yeah.
And I just want to quickly voice my opinion about this overtime convert stuff, and I did not enjoy that at all. It looked, okay, me personally, I think it looked really gimmicky, and no one knew what they were doing, and I just... Why are we making people gun out 2-point converts? Like, why weren't we just playing mini games? And honestly, I think if you survive too many games, you should get a point in the standings.
This is the first time I got to see the going to the 2-point convert
It
thing,
was
and yeah,
stupid. It was
it looked
stupid.
Mickey Mouse to me. It looked
Yeah.
like something
I
cheap. I mean,
understand they're trying to look like shootouts in hockey,
yeah.
and they're trying to do like penalty kicks in soccer, but I don't like penalty kicks in soccer, and I don't like shootouts in hockey. I only don't like 2-point converts in football in overtime.
Go for the 2 game mini games, and then I can live with a tie. And you're right, this game should have been a tie, frankly. Or, I mean, why do you pick a 2-point convert? If you're going to do that, if you're going to say, oh, we have to have some kind of shootout, go the other way. Say, okay, we'll do our 2 mini games. Then each team lines up at the 35 and kicks a field goal. If they both make it, they line up at the 40 and kick a field goal. And then they line up at the 45 and just keep going back that way. People, well, that's not offense. 2-point
Two
convert's not
returners
offense either.
stand at one end of the field. Each has a ball, and whoever makes it to the other
Yeah.
end first is the winner of this game.
Yeah, put your 2 fastest guys out in a race. What the hell?
It just seems like such a sad little tragic ending to what was. I mean, was it a good game? I mean, the defenses tried, and I mean, it came down to the wire, but it's just really just, I don't know. I didn't like it.
If you had it with one of those games where, I don't know, like I'm not saying this season, but that they're capable of, a game where it's Montreal and Calgary, and their defenses play well, but their offenses play better, and at the end of regulation, it's 37-37. And they go through 2 mini games, and they both score touchdowns and 2-pointers, so now you're into the 50s, and they go into 2-point converts, and they're playing so well that there's 6 or 7 of those, and then finally somebody drops a pass. How would that be satisfying to anybody? You know, it's just, in a game like this where it was not a great game, it was annoying enough as it was. But to me, it disrespects a great game if you're saying, well, we're going to keep doing this crap until somehow we get a winner.
Yeah.
My opinion.
Yeah.
This is brought to you by FanDuel, Bet360. No ties for you.
Yeah, well, we said that from the get-go, right? So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And as I said, I didn't and never had a problem with tie. And I don't think, again, this is going to happen that often. It's like a tie is every couple of years or that often. So I don't want to get all bent out of shape about it. They've made a decision. It could be worse. It could have been a field goal kicking contest, which is like ridiculous. At least this is a football play that they practice every day, and it is a offense versus a defense. It's not one guy, kicking a ball. So I'm all right with it. As I would, if they were going to do this and get rid of ties and had to have some mechanism to do it, this is as good a mechanism as any. So and next year when they move the goalpost, it opens up the middle of the field. So it makes that 2-point conversion even a little more interesting because you're going to have more room, because it's really the goalpost at the front of the end zone when you're on the 3-yard line does come into play.
Yeah.
Versus when you're, further back, it's not so much because you can work around it for your angle. Again, it's not worth getting worked up on. I got other stuff I can get worked up on about rather than.
Yes, I understand that.
I get agitated easily. But this one's not going to get.
Yeah. I'm probably more agitated by or sounding like it than I need to be. It's just, it was a case of they came up with this thing, and I didn't really have an opinion one way or the other. But the first time I actually saw this in action going beyond the mini games, it didn't look good to me. It didn't look like professional football.
Well, I think what didn't help was the fact that they didn't know who went next, and they were yelling at each other, and it wasn't well executed. If it was like, okay, guys, on off the field, and it's like executed properly and maybe a bit more time between each one so that the coaches can get the proper person on and off of the, rather than it's like, it just seemed a little discombobulated, for want of a better phrase. So maybe that's part of why it looked as bad as it did.
And they have had that problem with overtime earlier this season. I can't remember which game it was, but I do remember at the time one of the games went to overtime, and it went to 2 mini games before it was decided. And they came out and one team went first on offense and the other team had defense, as you'd expect. And then they came out, and rather than switching that up for the second mini game, it was the same order. They just seemed confused by it. Anyway, enough of that. We're going to go to the future now. Power rankings. The GT Barnum official CFL Outsiders power ranking for week 8 are...
Number 1, new number 1 again this week. This week, the Alouettes move into first place after winning a game that they could have lost, but they won. And they looked very good throughout the game, on most of it. Edmonton slides to number 2 because they won a game, but looked pretty bad in my opinion, and could have lost very easily. So I'm going to move them down. Saskatchewan stays at number 3. We'll see how they look this. Winnipeg at number 4 because they won. Calgary at number 5 because they lost. Even though I think they're a better team than Winnipeg, Winnipeg's has a better record and they won, so I will give them number 6 is Hamilton because they might have hope after all. Number 7 is Toronto because they look bad. BC is number 8 because they look bad, and it doesn't look like they have a lot of hope right this week. And Ottawa just because they look really bad continues to be in.
I feel like I can endorse those. They sound good to me.
This announcement brought to you by, yes.
Yes. Any complaints, MJ? You wanted Hamilton back in first?
Look at Hamilton climbing those standings. I would have Calgary over the Bombers, but other than that, I agree.
Yeah, because everyone keeps reminding me, power rankings are a snapshot in time, and
okay,
yeah, that one's
Calgary
a close one.
Went up against the top team in the league and almost won. The Bombers were playing the worst team in the league, and they should have lost.
Yeah.
And almost lost, so that's why I would have switched them.
So that's an interesting point. Maybe we'll have to call GT on this if he picks Calgary over Winnipeg this weekend, because that would have meant they should have been up there.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I also take into it a bit of the standings as well, and and where they are today, and a snapshot in time, as you called it. But it's also a little bit of where they can. And not where they will end up, but where they can be. And right now, Winnipeg is, I think, 2 games ahead of Calgary. So that's significant. That's significant.
And it's easy to sit here in the peanut gallery and take shots, but I'm very glad you're doing this. I wouldn't want to be the one to take the ranking. So thank you.
Well, as long as you're not delivering, the hate mail to me, as long as it's getting lost in the mail, I don't care.
There we go. Yes. All right. Moving on before we pick our games. Just the last bit of information we've been doing lately. The injury reports. Edmonton and Saskatchewan, they're playing Thursdays. Their depth charts will come out tomorrow, but they've already mentioned rated or listed players as questionable, doubtful, or out. And for Edmonton, Boyko, Mechie, and Mogenston are all questionable. And O'Donnell and Verde at the global linebacker are doubtful. So that could be a problem for their O-line. Saskatchewan, Lacumbo is out, and Milligan is listed back as questionable. So he may or may not be back this week. We'll have to see. It'll be interesting to see where they scramble in, because the whole Dalkey thing is about so much more than football. But it is also true they are down a linebacker / defense DB now. So where do they go from that? Calgary, good news in their defensive backfield, which if they've struggled at all lately, it's probably there. And Grant was backlisted as full participant this week. So hopefully he may be back in. Moncrief did not participate so far in practice. Winnipeg had no report. Toronto, if these are all people that are out, this could be ugly. Chatfield, Haggerty, the punter again, Judge and Shepley all did not participate this week. So that could be bad. BC, they've got a whole laundry list of players. Bell from the defensive line and Rourke, of course, did not participate. They had 9 people on limited, but that included some of those receivers that are out, like Barry Hill and Cote. So they may be coming back. And of course, Hamilton and Montreal, there's no reports from yet because they play on Sunday night. So that takes us to our game predictions. coming up this week. Edmonton at Saskatchewan. I've decided I might as well just say right now, barring any sort of injury, at this point, I figure Saskatchewan's got a chance of winning every game, so they're not going to win out the season. But I'm going to pick them for any game they're in, unless something happens that really changes that dynamic. So I'm going Saskatchewan. How about you, GT?
Well, under the circumstances, like I would normally take in Saskatchewan. Under the circumstances, I think this one's harder to pick. I'm trying not to be callous, but do they win one for Jake, or are they so messed up by everything that they're not able to play to their full potential, or want to win one so hard that they, as you said earlier, clutch the stick to? Edmonton is looser coming into this, and Edmonton wants to play better after that debacle last week too, I'm sure. I think this is a pretty tough one but I still think Saskatchewan just has the experience. They have what it takes. They should be able to win this game. So I'm going Saskatchewan.
All right. So the Riders have some special teams issues, mostly with kicking. Elks do not have that issue. Riders have not been playing super great. Harris did not have a good game last time he played. The Elks are winning games they have no business winning, and for that reason, I'm going to pick them.
Okay. Maybe I could have said more. This one is really tough because there's so much around it with the emotions. And like MJ said, the Riders' kicking game is in question. The Riders' return game is in question. They were having Daniel Weave doing
Alford this week.
Yeah, well, I don't see that by Thursday. So, but we'll see. Maybe it's so there's an awful lot there with it, and I could see it going either way. To tell you the truth, to me, the question is going to be, as good as the Riders' run defense is, it seems like every game they get gashed for one or two runs that go 10, 12 yards, and that doesn't kill them. But if Rankin does that to you, that can kill you, because there's a good chance he won't be stopping at 12 yards. So can they bottle him up the way BC did? And I think if they do, I don't see Edmonton winning a passing shootout kind of game. But you never know. That Edmonton defense is also J.C. Sherritt's second year as defensive coordinator, and he's got them up a couple of levels in what he's playing. So yeah. So we'll see. Anyway,
Rankin's gonna be really mad about what happened in the last game, so he'll be fired up.
Yeah. But again, to me, it's not, it's going to be trouble because Rankin's trying harder, because Rankin is trouble anytime. It's, yes, he's going to want more yards than that, but it's just, do they stop him? That's going to be the question for every team that goes against Edmonton this year. You stop Rankin, you got a good chance of winning. You let him do what he does, get in the open and start running for big chunks of yardage, you're going to lose.
No, BC stopped him and they still lost. So
yeah, I know, but that was, again, a different scenario.
That can happen to anyone. It's any game. Hopefully not, but you just never know. See if
Calgary at Winnipeg. GT, you go first.
You just said, I think Calgary's a better football team than Winnipeg right now, even though they have a worse. And I think that they're sooner or later going to get some of those. But they have to come out of the gate. So I think the first quarter defines this game. If Calgary comes out of the gate first quarter, then I think they can win if they start off slow, I certainly could take it. It's in Winnipeg, so that's tough. It's the first of 3 in a row on the road for Calgary, which is kind of weird at this time of year to be out on the road for 3 straight. I'm taking Calgary.
MJ.
All right. So anytime I think that Tommy Condell has proven me wrong, and I'm like, oh, sorry, my bad. He just forgets Brady plays on his team. They played so bad. Again, like I said, Calgary lost. They made it close against Montreal, who's the best team in the league. Winnipeg, it was close against the worst team in the league. So I think Calgary's going to finally pull it out here.
Okay. Well, I look at what's going on, and Calgary has lost a couple in a row now, haven't they? Oh, yeah, both to Montreal, but they were both good games and close games. Winnipeg has been, for the last 5 years, really hard to beat at home. They'll probably have another sellout crowd, 32,000. So that puts it up there. and Brown can make them competitive. So with all of that, my rational side says, maybe Winnipeg, but I just don't see it. I think in week 1 when they played, the teams were fairly even. I think since then, Winnipeg hasn't progressed a lot and Calgary has. So I'm going with the Stamps on this one. That takes us to Toronto and BC. And let's see. Yeah, you haven't gone first yet, MJ. How about you?
Right. Toronto's defense looked really bad. BC hung in there against one of the top teams in the league. Okay, so remember last year when Herslow and Arbuckle popped off? Because I was like, oh, they've both been doing second team reps together all season. A lot of those receivers lining up right now have been doing second team reps with Chase Bryce for a while. So they might do okay. Chase, he had 4 interceptions, but he did okay. He had that really nice pass to Hatcher, and he did not have any first team reps that week. It was just third play of the game. He come on in. It's finally a BC home game. They're at home now. Toronto's still on the road. I think some defenses are figuring out, as we talked about, they've figured out Chad Kelly. So I'm gonna go on a limb, and I think that BC's gonna eke this out at home.
Okay. And I'll maybe go next, and I'll say I think that BC's defense has been getting a lot of credit this last couple of weeks that doesn't actually indicate they're playing better. It indicates that they played a team they match up well against, and their defense is much better designed to stop them than they are Toronto. I have no faith in that BC. Toronto's defense is playing terrible. BC's defensive backfield is worse. So unless the one thing that could change this is if BC gets a good pass rush going. Again, if Toronto's O-line holds up even worse, and apparently Shepley may not be back in and stuff. So it's possible, but it's not a late game. It's a 4:00 game, so it's like playing 7:00 Toronto time. And I just think Kelly will exploit a bad defense far more than BC will be able to exploit a bad Toronto defense. So I think it's Toronto, and I don't think it's really close. I think it's 8 to 10 points. How about you, GT?
I think when you've got a really good upper echelon quarterback in the league versus a guy that's making technically his first start, yeah, I'm taking Toronto. But I believe BC's going to score a bunch of Toronto's, not because Chase Bryce is the next best thing, but simply because Toronto's defense is that. And I think that I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I would take the over, whatever it is. I'd take the over. Because I agree with Kelly's, Toronto's going to take advantage of BC's secondary, but I think BC's just going to take advantage of Toronto's defense, period.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd take the over.
I definitely agree with that. A spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't get a chance to tune in to Old Man Plays CFL Fantasy on Thursday afternoon when it drops. I'm pretty sure Kelly's my guy this week because there's about 4 choices out there, and the other 3 are all playing against relatively good defenses one way or the other, and Kelly isn't. I'm thinking, yeah, this could be another game that looks like the sort of the reverse score of the Calgary-Toronto game. I could see Toronto taking this by 10 points, but only because they score 58 or 60. All right, last one then. We'll let MJ go first as a Hamilton fan for Hamilton at Montreal. Are we going to see you wearing a Montreal jersey next week?
No, because the Ticats are winning.
Okay, I like it. And I think that they've got a much better chance now, but I don't think that it's quite enough. I said that they will still lose some games even if Trey plays well. And I think Montreal, unless they make some of the stupid coaching mistakes they did this week, they will probably take this one. And again, I don't see it necessarily being all that high scoring because of the defenses involved. How about you, GT?
Yeah, I agree. I think Montreal, and I think it's going to be a touchdown and yeah, I think Montreal just playing, they're playing well enough to beat anybody at this stage, pretty much.
Yeah, but I don't think that either team's going to put up a lot. If the over-under was 50 in this game, I'd take under. I don't think it's going to be a...
It's like Alexander Philpott versus Ford Lawler.
Yeah. Well, and if Ford starts getting some of that chemistry going with Smith that Bo had earlier this year, like
He'll
I said,
actually get to practice with the team this week. So,
Yes.
like he did that without any practice.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
And I mean, if they'd stuck with Dolagala, this wouldn't even be a question.
No,
At least now it's a question.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you just said, MJ, it's Ford versus Alexander. Who would you rather have? Who would you rather have?
To answer that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Come on.
Okay. Well, Ford has a hamstring that isn't wrecked, so
There is that. And
Okay.
one can never rule out the dazzling factor.
You never know. You never know. It's hard to scheme for him. It's hard to scheme for him.
Oh no, I think it's, as I said, I think it, they have a shot in a lot of games. I just don't think they have a shot in this game. I just think Montreal is playing that much anymore.
I guess, but Calgary almost beat them twice, and Elks almost took them to OT. And I just, there's a lot of parity, even if people are missing some key players. I'm picking underdogs this week, and it's going to be how it's going to be.
Yeah, and it's the other thing I think that plays into this a lot is the fact that Ford did look good this weekend. He's got experience, but not a lot. I don't think he started a full 18 games of football. And he's going up against that Noel Thorpe defense that you just never know what it's going to look like. So that's another reason that I don't see them being able to take it. Now, you never know. The thing with Thorpe's defense is sometimes he makes it confusing by playing players out of position. And will Ford take advantage of that if he suddenly scrambles and gets running downfield? And, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Hamilton win it, but I think the safe bet is Montreal, which is why I've gone that way. Let's close her off here.
Well, what am I going to do with all my time now that World Cup is over and the Blue Jays are terrible? I will be watching football. Find me on Instagram. Find me on Blue Sky at Sports and Plants.
Thank you much. GT.
And I will be watching football as well. In fact, I hope to be watching football while the games are on rather than on tape delay again. So, yes, that's what I'm getting really tired of, MJ. I'm just watching too much tape delay. So, anyways, yes, you can also find me occasionally on Blue Sky at GT Bar.
Okay. And I do tape delay on all games. I watch starting about half an hour, 45 minutes late, because then I can zip through the commercials and the halftime stuff that I'm not interested in. But I will be probably recording all 5 TSN channels every game. Just fool me once, and they've got me twice now. Other than that, not a lot to say. Please subscribe if you haven't. Drop us a like. Drop us a comment. We'd love to hear that. And otherwise, thank you for being with us. Thank you for those of you that are enjoying it enough that we're seeing you come back regular week after week. So that's great. Until next week, for GT and MJ, this is Old Man saying, get the hell off my lawn.